Hello and a big welcome back to the channel. Today we're at Six Flags in Washington, D.C. Actually, it's not in Washington, it's in Maryland, but it's the closest theme park to Washington, D.C. My job is to help you understand exactly what you can expect, how to plan your visit, and also, is it worth your time? And most importantly, is it worth your money and the right move for you and your family? The images you're seeing right now is me driving towards the theme park. And the first thing for you to understand is that parking is not for free. You'll get two options. The first is premium parking and regular parking. My first pro tip to you, take the regular parking lot. Most people did this. It's not that far from the premium parking lot. We are one of the first people here. So as you can see, the parking lot is pretty empty, but the premium parking lot doesn't really save you a lot of walk-in time. Unfortunately, this Six Flags location has had a history of violence. So what does that mean? It means you have to go through a metal detector before coming to the front entrance, which is right here. The first thing I want to point out is that the park actually opens fairly late in the morning, in my opinion. I think right now it's around 10 o'clock. Again, we are some of the first people there. And if you've ever been to, say, Universal Studios, there's a sense of excitement and people are rushing as they first enter the park. Not so much here. I just want to point out, though, that this town section, this main entry, is really scenic and iconic. It looks like a old town type of America, like a Williamsburg type of look, and it really gives a great sense of expectation as you enter the park. The main attraction to Six Flags is going to be the roller coasters, the thrill rides. And most of them are scattered throughout the park, but generally towards the back of the park. The rides that you're seeing right now, they're actually not operational. They're just testing them out to make sure they're working properly, because if you look closely, you'll see that there's no one on these rides. If you've never been to the park before, the park gets a little bit confusing. I strongly recommend you study the map the night before. That way, when you get to the park, you're not going to waste your time looking at a map. However, I got to say there's lots of directional signs. So there's a lot of ways that you can help figure out where you are and help you understand where you need to go. Now, you remember I said earlier, it doesn't pay to park in an area closer towards the front. And the reason why is because no matter what you do, you're never going to escape the fact that you're going to be on your feet all day. You're going to put on maybe 15 to 20,000 steps. That's a lot of walking, and that's because the park is fairly large. There's a lot of open spaces. The rides are pretty much spread out. So for most of the day, when you're not standing in line or on a ride, you're going to be walking. Now, the good news is if you have mobility challenges, I did see quite a few people using wheelchair or other types of scooters or mobile devices. Now, this is my first pro tip to you. If you have young kids, I strongly recommend you bring a stroller. And the reason for that is because eventually halfway through the day, no matter how excited they are, they're going to get tired and they're not going to want to walk anymore. They're going to get miserable and cranky. However, if you have a stroller and you can get them off your feet, it's going to extend the day for you if that's what you want. And it's going to make your experience a lot more enjoyable. There are also lockers to rent to help reduce the amount of stuff you carry around with you. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of Six Flags. Six Flags is known for roller coasters. Unlike Disney World and Universal Studios, which is more, an experienced types of ride, Six Flags is known for thrill rides that'll get your blood pressure going. That's meant for young adults and teenagers. And if you like those kind of rides, then you're more than likely going to really enjoy Six Flags, because that is the big draw that gets people through the door. Now let's talk about getting on the rides. To give you a little bit of perspective, this is just about towards the end of the summer, but it's still in summer. Kids are out of school and people are still visiting the DC metropolitan area in groves. Now, if you look around, you don't see a lot of people, and that's because Six Flags is not very crowded. You'll find a lot of empty seats. You'll find that you can just walk right up to a ride and get directly on it without having to wait in line. Now, as we get further on a little bit in the day, it gets a little bit more crowded, but for the most part, getting on a ride is not a problem. If you want to ride in the front, which is a premium seat, you may have to wait 1 or 2 times, but for the most part, getting on the ride is super easy. Let's talk about the rides and your rides experience. If you love roller coasters and thrill rides, then you're in for a treat. However, if you don't, then this park may not be the right space for you. As you can see, the roller coasters again are the main draw. This is why people come to Six Flags. You can look at this roller coasters and you can see that most of the people on here are kids and young adults. So if you really enjoy this type of experience, then this is going to be right for you. Some roller coasters are a little bit more shaky, others a lot smoother. You just have to really try it out. There's even one that goes upside down. It's a really, really fun experience. A lot of different ways for you to, get your heart pumping and blood racing. You may recall I said earlier that for the most part, getting on rides is not a problem. Well, that's most rides. Sometimes there is a bit of a wait, like this ride right here. But the wait's not because of anything more than just, the ride is operating at a third capacity. That's because the other two sides of this ride are broken. Now, this is a good segment of any to tell you a little bit about my channel. I specialize in fun and interesting things for individuals and families to do in the DC metropolitan area. So if you're new to this area or you want to find out some things to do, please check out my channel. And the most important thing you can do to help me is to like and subscribe. This was a part of Six Flags I was not a big fan of, and you let me know how you feel in the comment section. What I'm talking about is rides that have an additional cost. What I mean by that is, once you pay your entrance fee to enter the park, this ride right here, it's a go-kart, you had to pay an additional fee in order to do the go-kart. You could say I'm a theme park traditionalist in that I am old school. What I mean by that is when I pay to enter a theme park, I don't expect to pay to ride rides a la carte. And this is exactly what this is right here. So again, let me know what you think of in the comment section, but this part of Six Flags, not a big fan of at all. Let's talk about overall ride satisfaction. For the most part, the kids and adults I was with had a good time. The kids had a better time than the adults. That's because they really like thrill rides. Some of them had been to Universal Studios earlier that year, and one of the things they liked about coming to Six Flags was that they could almost go on every single ride without even trying in just one day. They couldn't ever think about doing that at Universal Studios. The downside was that the adults didn't find many rides that appealed to them. They didn't necessarily want to go on the roller coasters, but outside of the big thrill rides, there wasn't that many rides for them. One of the big draws of the park is not just the thrill rides, but it's also the food. That's part of the experience of going to the park. And in my opinion, the best bet, the best bang for your buck is the all-day food package. That's going to cost you around $45 to $50. And here's what you get with that. You can go into a multitude of restaurants and you can order an entree and a dessert. And you can do that every 90 minutes. If you start off at the beginning of the day towards the end, you can have multiple meals. Each meal in and of itself costs around $20. So just by getting 2 meals, you're almost at the $45. Now, one of the drawbacks to the meals I found was there wasn't a lot of variety. Also, the food tasted kind of, it wasn't great. Also, the service was extremely slow. So those things I feel they really need to work on. Along with the food package, I recommend you get the drink package because for $15 or so, you can fill up on sugary drinks all day long. One of the downsides about coming to this park was that I found that there were some food places that were closed. This was largely due to the fact that the park wasn't all the way full and they had a hard time finding staff to work these locations. This was another major drawback in coming to the park. It's an older park, so sometimes you're going to find rides and attractions that are closed. So one of the things I recommend you do is check the website to see if you can tell if the rides you're coming there for, the iconic rides, are actually open. We are walking walking down one of the main thoroughfares of Six Flags, and as we look around, we're almost in the middle of the day, and you can tell that there are not that many people here. At this particular Six Flags, it is just not that full. There are just not that many people here. Now, one of the benefits of having a park that's pretty much empty on a Saturday in the summertime is that you get a chance to go on pretty much almost every single ride they have here at the park. A lot of roller coasters we went on several times. We got off the roller coasters and without getting in line, we just got right back on. And that's one of the benefits, especially if you really like and enjoy roller coasters and getting the most value for your money. Here's one thing that Six Flags completely got wrong. You just saw the sign for Gotham City to make you feel like you're in Gotham. However, you don't. They do a horrible job in trying to make you feel like you're in a different universe or, taking you outside of the DC metro area. You just feel like you're at a sign that has a photograph of a superhero or villain in front of it. You really don't get to feel like you're in Gotham or anywhere close. This brings us to another aspect of theme parks. Universal Studios and Walt Disney World are the big guys, and Six Flags is in a distant second. One of the things that Universal and Disney does really good is it makes you feel you're in a different environment. Six Flags does not do that well at all, and that's because Disney and Universal spends hundreds of millions of dollars, not just on advertisement, but also on making the world feel like you're in a different space. Six Flags doesn't do a good job of that at all. Here's another negative about the theme park. When I was there, it was in various stages of disrepair. You're seeing damage and things that you would never find at Universal or Disney World. And it's reflected in the cost that you pay for the park, and it's also reflected in what you see when you're actually there. And unfortunately, there were signs, oftentimes too many signs of wear and tear that are just outwardly visible, and it just needs a lot of work in order to get it to that premier park type class. Earlier in the video, I said that this park was really geared for teenagers and young adults, but really, what about young kids? I think adults are kind of the one category that this park really doesn't really cater for that well, but I think it does a fairly good job with the kids, and here's why. It has a kids section, a kids section just completely devoted to young kids. Now, the good and bad about the kids section is that if you have a teenager or young adult and then you have a young child, this area is going to be very unappealing to young adults and teenagers because this really just strictly applies to the kid. But one of the things I really loved is this indoor play area. It was almost like a magic wonderland. So I really loved the fact that they had a kids section completely dedicated to young kids. However, I wish they had put a few rides in there that would maybe say cater to, teenagers, like the bumper cars and stuff like that. Now, unlike the rest of the theme park that really didn't have a lot of bright colors or didn't really flow or connect well together, I think they did a very good job in the kids section, making you feel like you were in sort of another world. Now, don't get me wrong, other theme parks do a better job, but this wasn't bad at all. Now, I mentioned earlier that this park has some security concerns, and there have been incidents where individuals have brought firearms and have discharged them within the park. That was years earlier. And also, this park has changed hands quite a few times. And because of the challenges, you're going to see maybe more security staff presence here than you ordinarily would. But it kind of is reassuring knowing that you have people walking around. They weren't intrusive. They didn't make you feel unsafe. And, it was quite comforting knowing that if there was an issue, that there was somebody there that you could turn to for help. If you're at the park for the entire day, you're going to take between 15 and 20,000 steps easily. What that means is that you're going to look for every opportunity to get off your feet, especially if you're an adult waiting for your kids to get off a ride. Here is one thing that surprised me. These rides cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's a lot of safety concerns with each ride. If you do something wrong, it could be catastrophic. What I found interesting was that most of the people who operate the rides were young people who were young adults. They did a good job in my opinion, but it really just surprised me the lack of adults that I saw there. For those of you who don't know, Six Flags is connected to a water park, and I assume that there will be rides within the main theme park that you would be able to get wet. However, I found that not to be the case. This is the only ride where you were going to get wet. But the bad thing is, if you were on this ride, you were pretty much soaked. When we purchased our tickets for Six Flags, there was an opportunity for us to come to Hurricane Harbor, which is right next door, for just an extra $10. And I recommend you don't take that offer. Here is why. Each one of these parks are independent, all of their own. In other words, if you go to Hurricane Harbor, that's an all-day affair. You go to Six Flags, that's an all-day affair. Now, I would say maybe you should try both if the park's hours were longer, but they were not. The park closed at 6 o'clock, opened at 10. That's only 8 hours. You don't have enough time to really, in my opinion, experience both. So to answer that million-dollar question, is this park worth your time? And most importantly, is it worth your money? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. And here is why it's worth it. For the money you spend on the park and for what you get for the price you pay, you're getting an awful lot for awful little. And this makes the park absolutely worth the time. For those listeners who have been to this park before, I would love to hear what you think. Please leave a comment in the comment section, and thank you for watching.